Hello everyone, what's up guys? Random Porpoise here for like the first actual video in a while. And yeah, I know it's not Geometry Dash, but if you saw the description of my last video, which was also Planet Coaster, I really haven't been having any motivation for Geometry Dash at all lately. And so I have decided, I've been playing a lot of Planet Coaster, so I decided I want to make kind of like a series out of it about making a park. I've done something kind of similar in the past where I did more of a Let's Play series, but that kind of stopped. Like, I didn't really finish it mainly because I ran out of money and I just wasn't enjoying it. Because I like playing in like Sandbox where I have unlimited money. I don't really like having to worry about money management and shit. So yeah. This is the first roller coaster I built, and so far the only roller coaster that's in the park. It's an S&S air launch roller coaster. They don't really have an in-game model for that, but the Sprint 500, which is modeled after Formula Rossa, is like really, really similar to like the track type and trains and launch system. So I decided to use that. So yeah, I'm gonna have to talk for 25 minutes. This is hard. I'm bad at talking. So we'll see how the series goes. I don't know if I'll finish it. I hope I will. But if you guys like it, I'll definitely have like more motivation. I'll probably still do it if it doesn't get that much. I don't know. I don't know how this is gonna go. This is still pretty new to me, like this sort of video, especially because it's a completely different game than the content I've been making for like the past year, maybe more. Yeah, more. Like I can't think of the last time I made like a video of a game other than Geometry Dash, besides my last one, which was just a showcase of something I made. I will link that in the description and stuff. I'll also link a playlist to all my roller coaster related content, because I've made a couple videos on like Planet Coaster before, and just general roller coaster stuff. And I've also done I built a roller coaster in Minecraft, which that's probably the closest thing I've done to what I'm doing now, where I just recorded myself building it and then did like a voiceover of the time lapse. So yeah. Also, the preview that I'm seeing on my screen while I'm like voicing this is really low quality and the frames are kind of choppy just cause I don't know. I know it's something with just the editor, like with sped up footage. The editor is like, yeah, we're gonna make it slow for no reason. So I don't know what that's about. Well, not really slow. It's just like 2 frames per second basically. So I can still see easily what is going on screen, especially because like I remember building it, because it's all within like the past week. But yeah, hopefully the quality turns out good in the final like recording of it. I have to cough a lot. What the heck? This is stupid. But yeah, so I used a lot of for most of this roller coaster, I used the 4-meter smoothing technique, which if you don't know, it's when you build your entire roller coaster out of really small pieces. I have a mod that makes it so 4 meters isn't the smallest. I can go down to 1 meter, but in the base game it is 4 meters. So there are parts like the Heartline roll towards the end that goes over the path that use 1 meter pieces. But the rest of it basically is either just normal track length or 4 meter pieces. And then what you do, once you built all the part, like at least the whole element or maybe the whole roller coaster out of those pieces, you take 4 of them, click the smooth button once, then move it over. So it's hard to explain. It's like you don't move it to the next set of 4. You basically add 1 like forward and then take away 1 back. So you just hold the little middle button there and you move it forward and then click smooth, and you keep doing that until you get to the end of the portion you want to smooth, and then you go backwards. And then you do that as much times as you need to get smooth. Most people say that you should do back and forth 4 times. Sometimes I do more, sometimes I do less. What I usually do, I do it once or twice, and then I like ride the roller coaster with a POV. I do the POV or whatever, and I see if it's smooth, and I'll usually end up doing it again after my first and second time. But once I find it smooth enough for my liking, that's when I stop. But if it's not smooth enough, I'll just go and do the thing again. Sometimes it needs profiling, like it's like some of it's a bit jank, like, oh, this part of the element's too high, so I need to change that. And that's usually the easiest to identify like after my first time. Because like the problem is like when it's like really unsmooth, it's like the way the building works. There's no continuous banking, so it's like really janky and like weird, and it's kind of hard to tell the profiling, especially on smaller elements. So it's easier to smooth once because that gets the majority of the unsmoothness like away, and then I can kind of tell if I did the profiling right for the element. But yeah, like there's like it's a completely different, I guess, type of being unsmooth than on the normal way of building a roller coaster in this game. Because normally you use like bigger pieces and you just kind of spam the smooth button. At least that's what I used to do, and I know a lot of people do that. That's kind of like the most popular way, I guess. Also, some of this was built on stream, so some of it you might see like stream stuff like the chat or my hand cam, as you can see. Yeah, that was kind of off topic, but what was I saying? Oh yeah, it's like where it's not really rattly, but it's like the profiling is a lot harder to get right. Transitions will often be really jerky, or like turns will be less spanked than you'd want them to be. And I'd rather have I'd rather, if I'm gonna have an unsmooth roller coaster, I'd rather have it the 4-meter style, which is more realistic. Where it's like, it's just a bit jittery, and it looks like kind of if you were trying to hold a camera on a real roller coaster that was a little rough, and or even if it wasn't rough and it was kind of jittery, like if you look at some not really, like if you look at a rough coaster in real life, it's usually because it's like bumpy and stuff, and you kind of get jostled around, and like if you're to attach a camera like a GoPro to the lap bar, the footage would be a bit shaky, and that's similar to what it would be with the 4-meter method. While the normal like way of building in Planet Coaster, I guess, or I guess maybe the way it was intended to be built, coasters were intended to be built, it's more like a really old coaster that was built before like computers were used. And like a lot of the turns and transitions are more layered. Like Magnum XL200 at Cedar Point is a good example, because a lot of the turns and stuff are like really, they're not as like flowy, I guess, and they're like unnatural, and the profiling is just really weird and jank. I've been on it, and I find it a very fun roller coaster, but you can definitely tell that it was built in a different time, where like modern roller coasters, they're a lot more like, I guess, smooth, like within like the transitions. Like it looks like it was very obviously designed with like computer software, and it's not like, how do I say it? It's like, you know what I mean, I guess. It's like more flowy, and it's maybe not as like intense. I guess the G-forces are more like managed, where sometimes there is more, but it's like, it's not like a random spike of 5 Gs. It's more like consistent 3 Gs, you know? So, yeah. And I think the 4-meter method, it's definitely, if you want to make realistic coasters, it's definitely like worth it, and it's pretty much a must-do in my opinion. And not necessarily for the whole layout. Some roller coasters and like coaster types in game, and maybe depending on the type of layout you're trying to make, it's not really as necessary. Like if you're making a an out and back roller coaster, it's a lot easier. You don't really need to use 4-meter smoothing as much in my opinion, because airtime hills are really easy to get right. But it's mainly for stuff like inversions and turns, like going into bank turns, that it's really necessary. Like, I find that the hardest thing to do in this game is probably a 0G roll. Because it's impossible to get right without, like, whether you're building the normal way. If you use the pre-made elements, which I don't really like using, except for vertical loops, that's the only thing I use pre-made for, nowadays. It's like, there's no heart lining, which is, the 0G roll is like the one element that basically always has heart lining, except on wing coasters, but that's a different story. But if you don't know what heart lining is, it's like, it's made to reduce lateral G-forces. It's so, kind of the center, like the track rotates around a center that's kind of in line with with people on the ride, instead of the center of the track. So that's why you'll see like heartline rolls kind of make like a spiral. You'll see it in the POV of this at the end of the video, that I have inserted in there. But like it kind of goes, or it's more of the track goes around the train than the train goes around the track. I'm bad at explaining things. I should just stop. But I'm not. But so like smoothing also, it's a lot of times with zero G rolls when you build them in game. If you do somehow manage to get them smooth with normal piece lengths, it often makes it gets rid of the heart lining, and the pre-made elements have none of that, so it just looks really weird, and I don't like it. And even with the 4-meter method, I find it hard. Like, I had a lot of trouble with that first zero G roll right after the launch on this. That is the first of the 2 inversions that go over the path. It's the taller one. Because you have to get the height right, but you also have to get the banking right too, and it's kind of hard to get right. It took a lot of trial and error, and then eventually I redid it like multiple times. Sometimes just because I kind of started the banking too early or too late for my liking, and then eventually towards the end I kind of reprofiled it one last time because I was kind of looking at the stats and I realized that you were still having 3 Gs in the 0 G roll, which means you'd be pressed against your seat instead of having that hang time where you fall against your lap bar, or your restraint or whatever. And I want it to give a nice mix of like whip through it, so like you rotate really fast, and also hang time, so you kind of fall out of your seat a little bit. Basically reverse air time, which I did end up, I got it to around like 0.7 Gs, I think, which still isn't really good. That doesn't really lift you out of your seat, but when you watch the POV, it looks like a normal 0 G roll would, I feel like. And there are 0 G rolls which don't, in real life, which don't really have, how should I say this? They don't really, you don't really fall out of your seat as much. It's more of like, the elements are more made around having that really fast rotation, and you're kind of like whipped to the side. So, I guess it's not a big deal. And especially since this ride is meant to be, like, really fast and intense and crazy. And yeah. Now we're doing the station. And these fence pieces from the studio pack, I absolutely love. They're usable for fences, and also, like, many other things, like cages, and, like, putting under the coaster track. Like, because a lot of times in real life, if the coaster track goes over a path, there's going to be, like, a little net under it, so in case anyone's phone falls out of their pocket or anything, it'll just fall into the net instead of hitting people on the path, you know? And these are really good for it. Also, there's, on the Theme Maker's Toolkit, which it's, like, people can make things, scenery items in Blender, and then, like, import them to Planet Coaster and put them on Steam so you can download them and use them in-game. There's a good one, I like using this, by the way. Not, like, excessive, like, if I can make it look good with the scenery stuff in game, I'll do that instead of using a custom item. But I do use custom items. I think they're very good, and they're there and they're free, so I don't see why it's like you wouldn't want to use them. I mean, of course, if you want to force yourself to be like creative with the in-game objects, I get that, but there's just some things that are impossible to make look good, especially smaller things. But yeah, there's a really good looking coaster net it's really only good for certain track types. Unfortunately, this coaster type isn't one of them. It doesn't really work as well for this, but if you saw my last video, Bear Claw, which, like, that used a lot of the nets that were used, like, below the track on some parts where it goes over paths, that's what that was. I used that item, and it's really cool. Another Theme Maker's Toolkit thing that I really like, there's this one small font. I forget who made it. Again, I always forget who makes everything. But it's like a bunch of small letters, and they're perfect for like smaller signs like, oh, here's the entrance to this coaster. Or, oh, here's a little gift shop. Because the in-game signs, honestly, all the fonts basically suck. Except for one of them, which is only good for like a more like sci-fi theme. And even then, it's not great. Mainly because it's not really versatile. Like, it wouldn't work if you're trying to make a Western themed ride. And then it's also really hard to make good looking small like letters and fonts in game. So I'm really grateful for that. And there's a few like different fonts that there are. I have 2 different ones downloaded. One of them is the small font, and the other one's is a little bigger than the small font. It's like not quite Planet Coaster letter size, but it's a good size for, like, entrance signs for some roller coasters. Which I did use it for the entrance to this, which, by the way, it's called Flamethrower. I think it's a really cool name. Someone in my Twitch chat came up with it. I think their name was Death Fears None, I think. So, shout out to you. thanks for the name. It's sick, and it kind of gave me the whole idea for this like fire theme, and so I had like the fire shooting up next to the launch track, and like the orange and yellow colors were already there. But yeah, this is the small font you can see. I just placed there and here on the gift shop. So yeah. Also I got a lot of like little items you can place in a gift shop, like little cups, and like model roller coaster trains and like t-shirts and shit. Like real stuff you'd find in a gift shop from a roller coaster. So yeah, that was pretty cool. I'd never really used the Theme Maker's Toolkit before until like I started fooling around with Great Bear, and I was like, okay, I want this to look as good as possible. So, yeah, and like I saw a video that I got reminded of those items. So I'm like, oh shit, I should use these. And there's a lot of like my older parks, like there's stuff that like would have been like infinitely better if I had remembered to use them, because I'd heard about it before, but I never really thought about it and stuff. So yeah, I never exactly used it. Like, I mean, obviously, I still think like some things that I have used Theme Maker's Toolkit items I will also sometimes do with in-game items. Like I said, the nets, like, because I also think that these 4-meter fence things from the studio pack work really well for if you're trying to go for more of like a fence kind of effect, like, or like like chain link. They look really realistic and I love them. And they work better for some types, like this one here. But they also, some types, they don't really work as well. Like B&M track, which I used, which is the track on Bear Claw. So I use those. And then the fonts too, like sometimes if you want to have like a big grand entrance sign and your coaster name isn't really too long, then it's good. I do like using the art pieces to make like custom larger fonts. So yeah, here I'm kind of like, I just kind of expanded the paths a little bit for my park, kind of giving a bit more of a template of like where I wanted stuff. I already have like a little list, in like Google Docs or whatever. That kind of is like, I have like every single roller coaster I want. Not the design of it, but just like what type of it is. I think there's like about 11 roller coasters that I want to have in this park. So that's pretty cool. I have that all planned out. Which can help for like kind of keeping your park like, I guess, under control and more realistic. Because in one of my other parks, I have like a lot of roller coasters. A lot of them are pretty similar. Just because I kind of kept being like, oh, but what if I had this? You know? But yeah, here I had like, this was really annoying to figure out. I had like a little countdown for the launch to kind of like build like anticipation and like, I guess, theatricality. I think that's the word I'm looking for. Like make everything more dramatic, like when the coaster launches. And at first I tried to have like lights that would light up when the roller coaster passed the trigger onto the launch track. Which that wasn't the hard part. The hard part was figuring out what effect to use, because I couldn't just make the numbers appear there. So I tried using lights, but that would only work at nighttime because lights don't work in the day. What I ended up using was the special effects for airplane smoke, so it kind of like looks like you're shooting off sparks and smoke, which works both with the theme of the roller coaster and with the trains, which kind of look like cars. So that's pretty cool. And another thing, like, that's kind of, I've never really done before with this roller coaster. Like, I've never really done anything like this where it's like a countdown for my launches. I lost track. But if you guys have been to basically any Six Flags park, specifically, I'm talking about Six Flags Great Adventure on Nitro, there's like a lot of ads everywhere in the queue for Snickers, and me and my friends joke that that's like the theme, and we call it the and we don't really call it the Snickers ad, we're like, oh haha, Nitro's has a Snickers theme. I kind of did the same thing with this ride, but with Gulpy, which is like an in-game energy drink brand. Because in the Theme Maker's Toolkit, like, I saw a lot of, like, Gulpy-related stuff, so I ended up downloading a bunch of it, and then deciding, hey, I'm gonna kind of make it, like, sponsored by Gulpy. This ride's sponsored by Gulpy. I went with the phrase, powered by Gulpy, and I actually really like it, because A, the dinosaur looks so cool, like, the logo for Gulpy in-game, and, like, I think I did a good job with it, like, kind of making it look so it wasn't just plastered there randomly. Um, like obviously there's like there were some ads in the queue line, but like, and like posters in the station, but like I kind of integrated it later into the little thing that goes above the launch with the countdown. Add the little gulpy dino, a little thing of it that had like its hand waving that I found on Steam. It was a Theme Maker's Toolkit item. I don't like using like blueprints that people have made in game because that feels like it's just stealing other people's work, you know. Where like using custom items, it's like it's just stuff it's like it's just like a new item, you know, and you can use it in your own creative ways. But yeah, so I used that which I found there, and I had like using the small font too, and one of the in-game gulpy signs I had I built like a little like thing that I used a bunch, and like I put one kind of right near the entrance, which the entrance area was heavily inspired by Green Lantern at Six Flags Great Adventure, which is my own park. I go there a lot, and I love it. It's such a good park. There's so many good roller coasters. But yeah, what was I saying? Yeah, so I definitely really kind of like how the queue line is and like the entrance area of Green Lantern. I think that the park did a really nice job with it. And I also actually do really like the queue for Nitro. Like, it's not really that like well maintained, but there's just something about it, like how everything looks, that is just like a vibe. Like it just I don't mind waiting in that line at all. And it would be the same with Green Lantern if there wasn't a giant area of switchbacks behind the station where you can't see the coaster. And if there's something I don't like, it's waiting in switchbacks. I will wait 3 hours, not 3 hours. I'll wait like 2 hours for a good coaster. Maybe 3 hours if it's like top 5 worthy, like El Toro. If it's like the queue is at least looks nice, and you can see, or you can like see the roller. Like if you can see it from when you're waiting in line. I don't really mind waiting a long time for that. But if it's just the park got lazy and they plastered a huge area where the queue just goes back and forth, and then bam, you're in the station. I feel like the wait time just feels so much longer like that. And a big victim of this is Hershey Park. Specifically, I want to call out Fahrenheit. I waited about 20 minutes for that. It felt like 2 hours because it's just right next to the station and kind of the left hill. You can't really see the actual layout. It just goes back and forth and back and forth. There's just a huge area of switchbacks, and it was so goddamn boring. Where like, if we compare that to Nitro, there is an area of switchbacks which is understandable because like it saves a good amount of room, but they put it right at the beginning of the queue. So you're only gonna have to wait on switchbacks like on really, really busy days. And then like there's kind of a whole like long and windy section for Nitro that you don't really get a good view of Nitro just because it goes out in the woods and back, but you get a good view of Batman. So yeah, I'm gonna end the recording now because there's a POV starting. So yeah, thank you guys for watching, and I will see you in the next one.